Okay, let's continue our discussion about the debugging. Well, this is another very common error. Well, but the error message, on the other hand, can be really scary. That is, if we want to read a CSV file and yet we don't have this CSV file. Okay, so you may assume that this should be an easy error, and yes, it is. But look at the error message. The error message is kind of scary because you see a big chunk of the things. Why? Because we are trying to call this panda.readCSV. And then inside of the read CSV function definition, which is here on a specific line of the code, we have the arrow. And that is in a underscore read function. And inside of the underscore read function, and then it is this line that we have the arrow. So I think this stack goes deeper and deeper and deeper, and then for the Python it tries to show you what's going on from the very high level all the way down to the very low level. So you may find, oh boy, there's a lot of error messages. It seems that this is a huge error, but it's not. Well, it's only here. Well, if by reading on this line of code, then you will see what's wrong with this block. And then, well, you see the error type. This is a file not found error. And if you see this very last line, it says that this file does not exist. So, well, if you are seeing this kind of super long stack of the error messages, usually the useful information is either on the top or on the very bottom. Okay? And here are some of the even harder error message, even harder bug. And in this example, we start from a list. And on this list, and we want to iterate through all the members. And the process is, if we see an occurrence of cat as a string, I want to delete that. Okay, so it seems that this task is not so hard. But when I code this, and actually this function is not that easy to debug. So let's take a look on this code. Well, I want to remove all the cats, and this is the name of the function, and I'm taking a list as a parameter. And after that, I do for I in the range of the length of my list. So I'm using the I as an index to visit all the members one by one. And if the current item with the index I is a cat, I want to do a delete, deleting the current item using the index I. Okay, it seems that this code is not so hard. And after that, I create two test cases. The first one is we have a list of 3 cats. The second list we have no cat at all. Okay, and then we run this code, and this is the line we have the arrow. That is, well, you see for this line, that is remove all cats and birds. Okay, so this is the line of the code. We have the arrow. And inside, Python will go inside and show us where, on which line of the function we defined, we had the arrow, which is this line of code. And the arrow is the list index out of range. What does this mean? This means, say, if we have a list of the 10 items, and then I'm using the 20 as the index. And Python will say, wait for 1 minute. There are only 10 items, so the valid indexes will be from 0 to 9, so there's no index 20. Okay, but if you see this one, we are using the for I in the range of the length of the mat list, so I can't go out of the range. So what's going on? Well, and this is kind of hard for me to debug, and then I decided, wait, let me bring to this part. And then I decided that I want to do some output information. So the first thing I did was in each round, remember I'm controlling the indexing using index I. So each round I'm going to print the index of I. And after that, I'm also printing the current version of the list. So each round of the iteration, when I start, I want to print the I, and then I also want to print the current version of the list so far. And after that, if I got delete something, and then I will say, okay, I have deleted something. Well, those are just output information. And using the output information, and I can see on each round what has happened behind the scene. Because this error message may not be on the first round, it may not be on the second round. So how do we figure out when this error happened, right? Say, well, in the first round, and then I started from this with this one, which is two cat and then bird, cat and bird, and then I'm say I deleted the first item, so that is deleted, and after that I will be one, and I will be one, so I'm visiting this bird. And then, well, this bird, that's okay because I'm visiting bird, not cat. So I'm gonna start the third round. So the third round, I is gonna be a 2, so I'm visiting this cat. And if you say, okay, this cat is deleted. And after that, the round 3, so, oh, wait for 1 minute. Well, we are visiting the I as 3. But if you see the current version of the code, how many items do we have? We only have 2. Sorry, we only have 3, but the index will be 0, 1, and 2. So there's no index 3 in this case. Do you see the problem? The problem is, well, there are 5 items in this test case. So we are going to use I to visit from 0 to 4. But as we are visiting and deleting, the length of the list shrink, shrink, and shrink. So when it's already shrunk, and then there's no index 3 anymore, and then we got this error. So this error happens on the 4th iteration in this part. So, well, this makes the code harder to debug. And plus, we are doing this as a function call, right? So we have already defined a function. So if you define a function, well, and later you have to spend time to debug this function. Well, this is going to be harder because we cannot break this function into one line after another line. So my strategy of making the function is I'm going to create the code without the function first. I want to make sure the code works 100% correct. And then I want to put the code I have already tested into a function definition. So I'm assembling a function after making sure all the small parts are correct. Okay? So, well, this is just a much easier case. So, well, I'm gonna do an iteration saying as long as there is still at least one occurrence of the cat in the list, and then I'm gonna remove the first cat, and then I'm gonna go back and check again. I'm gonna run that as many runs as I have to until there's no more cats in this list. Okay, so the next one, I want to do another debugging. And again, this is a problem after we put that into a function definition, after we use a iteration, and then the debugging gets really hard. And well, another thing I want to remind you is this is another case that we write the code, we run the code, nothing breaks, but we don't have the correct output. This is the hardest type of debug we can possibly deal with when we are writing Python. Well, for this problem, that is, we want to get the probability of what is the possibility or what's the percentage that we can roll in sixes in a row using a regular die. Okay, a regular die with 6 faces, and then we want to roll that for n times as one simulation. And we want to do that simulation for a total of 10,000 times. And we want to record how many times that we can roll in sixes. Okay, and if this 6 is 1, and then that is 1 divided by 6. And if this 6 is 2, this n is 2, and then we want to get the possibility of rolling 2 sixes in a row, and then the probability will be lower than 3%. Okay, so let's see the code. Well, I created a counter that is how many successful simulations we have, and out of a total of 1000 simulation. Okay, in the outer run, I want to repeat a total of 10,000 simulations, and then we have a inner iteration that is we want to roll the die for n times, and if for each round, if it is a 6, okay, we want to continue. Otherwise, if we roll a number it is not a 6, this is already a failed simulation, so I want to start over again without finishing all the possible rows of the currency simulation. Okay, so eventually if we finish all 6s, and then I want to increase the counter by 1, saying, well, I have 1 successful simulation. So eventually I want to return the number of the successful simulations divided by the total number of the simulation, which is 10,000. Okay, so this is a probability problem, and then we are using simulation to figure it out. And if I'm doing n as 2, that is the probability of rolling 2 6s in a row. So that is 1 divided by 36. So it's a little bit less than 3%. And see what I got. I got like 0.01%. So that is not correct. That's a problem. I know by doing the math, the probability should be higher than that. However, I get a low number but no error message at all. So how can I figure out what's wrong? So this is my plan. Well, for each round, I'm gonna print out the number of the eye. And then I'm also, if I have a successful simulation, I also want to print how many successful simulations I have so far. Okay, so I'm just making use of the print statement to give myself a little bit more information to figure out what's really going wrong. So, well, I did one print here and another print here. So this is the print for the I value, and this is the print for the successful simulations. Okay, and then eventually it seems that I see the problem. The problem is num all 6 in a row is 1. This is the first successful simulation, so that's good. And then when I have the second successful simulation, and then you will find the counter is still a 1. That's not correct. That should be 2. And then now this should be 3 instead of 1. So there's something wrong with this counter. It doesn't count how many successful simulations I really have. Instead, it stays at 1. So what's going wrong? The problem is here. Well, each time when I have a successful simulation, I should do this number plus equals 1, not equals plus 1. When I did the equal plus 1, this means the value of this counter should be a positive 1. So that's the reason that this counter stays the same as 1. Okay, so this is just a tricky bug, but when you code by yourself, and you're going to see a variety of the different type of the bugs, and then you really have to develop the skill of debugging the code to help you figuring out what's really going wrong. Okay, so this is the end of today's lecture, and today we talk about the lambda function. Well, lambda function is called a anonymous function. We usually don't bother to give lambda function a name, and the lambda function can be used as part of the map function call, because in the map function we are taking 2 parameters. The first one is a function and another one is a sequence, right? And then we talk about the debugging today. So for to avoid the pain of the debugging, the recommendation is you write small pieces of the code incrementally, and then after you write a small piece of code, you want to test the code to make sure that it works. Or if it doesn't work, and then at least you know you're attacking one bug at one time. Another thing is you want to make use of the error message. You don't want to be scared about the error message. And for some cases, the error message can get super long. And remember, the useful information is usually either on the top or on the bottom. Okay, and then if the code is very hard to debug, either because the code has already been wrapped into a function definition, or this is a code with iterations involved, and then you can try to make use of the print statement to help you figure out what's really going wrong. Okay, so that's it for today, and the next lecture we are going to continue our discussion about the lambda function. So see you later.